Good morning, everyone. As you can see behind me, I've got the F350 nosed into the garage. Let's do some brake repair I wasn't planning on doing today. Hello, and welcome to our channel. We're glad you're here. I was driving home from work last night, hit the brakes, and I could actually feel the brakes. So I knew I was down to metal. As loud as this diesel is, you can't really hear the brakes at all, if they're squealing or not. But it was definitely grinding, and I looked real quick, and the passenger side front is metal to metal. So we'll start this job by jacking the axle up and properly supporting it with the jack stand, and then we will remove this wheel. All right, once you are properly supported with the jack stand so it's safe, start by removing the center cap. These just pry off. They've got little metal spring clips on the back that hold on to a couple of the lug nuts. Then you remove the lug nuts. This takes a 21mm or a 13/16 socket. Once the lug nuts are off, you can remove the wheel. Roll that out of the way. Now it's going to be easier to access the brakes since they're on the back side of this rotor if we turn the wheel all the way this direction. But when you want to turn wheels on a Ford like this, make sure you start the vehicle, because if you don't, you're going to have a big puddle of power steering fluid on the other side. Okay, once we're turned in this position where it's easier to work, we can start removing the caliper. Once we get the wheel turned out, we can access the bolts on the back of the brake caliper. We've got a bolt up here on the top and down here on the bottom. Those are 17mm. We'll remove those, which will let the caliper come off, and we'll also stick a pry bar in here to pry this caliper open a little bit. Now, I'm afraid I might have a little more problem than just pads, because I already did the other side and those pads were in really good shape. And this side they're about gone. On the inboard they are gone. So we'll get this caliper off of here and take a look at what we got. Yeah, it's not prying back real easy.
Like somebody's going to be making another trip to the parts store.
Not today. Well, one thing I had noticed on this when I first looked at the truck was this caliper hose underneath this light here is not laying correctly. It's got a big kink in it. This caliper needs flipped over. So I'm not sure if that may be contributing to the brakes not working properly on this side or not. Yep, okay, time for a different ratchet. Got this, where do we get this at? O'Reilly's?
No, family. Oh, yeah, it was O'Reilly's.
Yeah, I think we got this at O'Reilly's. It was a ratchet on clearance. It's kind of gimmicky. It's nice that it's got an extendable handle, but that's how it ratchets. When it's this way, it loosens, and when it's this way, it tightens. The problem is when you're trying to swing the ratchet back and forth to get a nut loose, it wants to do this and change its direction. So it's nice for breaking stuff loose because of this extendable handle, but as far as actually working with it, it's sort of a pain. So I think it's time to swap out to a different ratchet that's not driving me crazy because of the flippy head. And we'll just use the old standard Craftsman for swinging the bolts around, and use that long one for tightening them up. Okay, so there's the caliper off. Let's see if we can get this caliper to compress back or not. And as you can see, I got every dollar's worth out of that pad. Take a C-clamp here and see if we can get these pistons to move back. And if not, I may be pausing this video and running to the parts store to get another caliper. And that piston's pushing back. They're going back. They're not going back easy, but they're going back.
Can't you try and do that? Oh, I can't do it right now because the thing's in it.
Yep, I think I might be going to get a caliper here. Yeah, we're done playing with this. So, what I will need to do is remove this bolt, which attaches the brake hose to the top of the caliper. And go get a new caliper, because this one is not wanting to go back. So let me figure out what size that is. It looks like about a 15 millimeter maybe. Actually, no, that's a 14 millimeter. There we go. Use that goofy ratchet to break it loose. I don't know if you can see there how it was flipping back and forth, being a pain. Grab a pan for that to grip in. Alright. Just move this bolt. Okay, there's that off of there. The pan to drip. Drain the fluid out of this caliper. Now what I will do with this off once it's drained, I am going to try and compress this one more time with it off the truck, with the hose off of it, and see if it will compress this way, which would indicate a bad brake hose. And with that, having that twist in it, it is a definite possibility. So it's done draining. Now, I guess I can do this up here. Clamp back on it and see if it's any different. And no, it's not. So it is definitely the caliper, not the brake hose. So I will run to the parts store and be back with a new caliper. Okay, we are back from the parts store with the new caliper, and it also came with this this mounting bracket, which is held on by two 21mm or 13/16 bolts. Pull those off now. Holy smokes! Alright, that was a little tight. I had to get a ratchet out to get it loose. I'm glad this came with the bracket, because these slider pins here, the boot's supposed to be attached down here. You see that one's still kind of shiny, and this one's all rusty. So at least I got the new one of those. And there's the new bracket, and the pads came with a hardware kit, which I highly recommend when you buy pads. You get the better ones that have the hardware clips. These go in here to hold the pads in position. There we go. Helps to have them lined up correctly. And put them on the right side. Just put that one on the wrong side. There we go. And what I always do, which I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's something I've always done when I do brakes, is I put never sees on these sliders, which I won't do on this one because they're greased from the factory. But I will put never sees in here where the pads contact these brackets to help keep the pads sliding. And I will also put it on the pads on the back side where they contact the caliper. And one other thing I do, which I'll turn the camera off so it doesn't be too noisy, is I take a die grinder and I run a die grinder around the surface of the rotors to put a non-directional cut on them. So let me do that real quick and I will be right back. Alright, that's all done. Basically what I do is I just hold the die grinder against the rotor and spin it while I spin the rotor by hand. And it just puts a little scratch surface on there that's opposite of the way the pads run. It helps the pads seat in quicker and helps stop chatter. Especially it was important on the back side of this one since it was grinding metal to metal. It's not horrible. The rotor is still definitely thick enough to be serviceable. It should be replaced, but right now I'm not going to do that. So we will put the bracket on. Originally this morning I was going to start filming the video of the loft because we're starting to work on that again, which makes this even more difficult because all the tools are stuffed back in the one stall to have them out of the way. So that's why I did the other side off camera so that I had all the tools already figured out that I needed for the most part. So let me tighten these up. Okay, that's on. Now we take our pads. Not sure if this is even in camera here. Sorry. Install our pads in the clips. And these also come with the springs that go in between the pads. I'll install those when I put the caliper on because it wants to spread the pads apart, which kind of makes it a little difficult to to do, we'll take our new caliper and I will add never sees to the piston faces and also to the front of the caliper where the pad rides. And again, that just helps with noise. Drop the new caliper on. It came with new bolts. There we go. The pins on these are kind of slotted on the sides. They drop into a spot there on the bracket. That way the pin doesn't spin when you're tightening it up. And that one wasn't lined up and the bottom one's not either. That must be why I'm having trouble getting my bolts to go in. And now we're going. Okay, that one's snugged up. That one's snugged up. Switch over to the big goofy ratchet. Get the final tightening with this one. Okay, and that slides back and forth like it should. Make sure our boots are on all the way. Now we can install our brake line. Of course, we want it in the correct orientation. Just got everything all twisted up on this thing. Whoever did it last. That looks like the right way. That's not all twisted. So we take our banjo bolt, put a copper washer on each side, stick her down in there, tighten it up. Just use the short ratchet for this one. Okay, there's that. Now I've got a clamp up here on the brake hose. There we go. That just gently squeezes it. It's got rounded sides on it so that it doesn't damage the hose. I know people used to put vice grips on these, and that can actually damage the inside of the hose. But this is specially designed to go on there and squeeze the hose down so it doesn't drip. So now that that's on there and the hose is open back up, I will go pop the hood and open the reservoir, top it off with brake fluid, and get what looks like probably to be a 10 millimeter for the bleeder screw, and I'll crack that bleeder open so we can start bleeding these brakes. Alright, before we bleed these brakes, I don't know if any of you have noticed what I did wrong. I need to take this caliper back off and install these spring clips on the pads. Quit laughing at me.
Oops.
Well, if you'd have been out here to remind me, I probably wouldn't have done this.
I should have been out here supervising, I know. Can't leave him alone for a minute.
Pull these two bolts back out. Caliper back. And like I said, these want to spread these pads out. So this has to be kind of a two-handed crazy deal here.
Four-handed crazy deal.
Sometimes an extra arm would come in handy as a mechanic. Alright, there's the springs on the pads. Bring the caliper back down. There we go. Now we can put our bolts back in. So, I guess that kind of goes to show you got to keep your mind in the game when you're working on something. All right, now we're back where we were at 5 minutes ago. Got the bleeder screw in here. What I did was I did take the bleeder screw out and lightly coated the threads with Never Cease just to help seal. And I wasn't even thinking about it, but I bought one of these vacuum bleeder things. So we'll give this a try. Put your hoses on the little canister. It's got different, that's too big. Different little caps here that go on the bleeder itself. Put that on there. And then you hook the pump up to the other hose. And pump. And as you can see, the brake fluid is coming up that hose into the canister. And we just keep going until there's no more air.
Well, isn't that fancy? Now I don't get to pump brakes anymore?
Well, I mean, if you really want to, I suppose we could.
This is just like the self-checkouts at Walmart. You're just eliminating someone's job.
Alright, there we go. That's pretty good. Air's all out of it. One thing you got to be careful of is you don't fill this up to where it sucks back into your pump. And we will tighten the bleeder screw up. And that should be it. Our hose is routed correctly this time. It doesn't have that kink in it. So I will go in and start the truck and turn the steering wheel straight. And one thing you want to make sure you do is gently pump the pedal 4 or 5 times to seat these, because right now both calipers are loose like this. So if you try backing this truck up, you've got no brakes and the pedal's going to go right to the floor. So I want to pump the pedal until I have a nice stiff pedal and turn this wheel straight so we can put the tire back on it. But the wheel's now straight and the brakes have been pumped up. I think I put about 7 pumps on the pedal. That brought it up to a nice solid pedal. Get this vacuum pump put away. And we can get the wheel back on this. So that is somewhat of a front brake job for a 2000 F350 four-wheel drive with a surprise caliper purchase. sure your lug nuts are good and tight. And reinstall your center cap. Simple as that. Now we just have to jack it up and take the jack stand out and put it back on the ground.
So this was unexpected Tuesday morning.
Yes.
Brake job 101.
Yeah, like I said, I was planning on filming the loft project over there. We finally got the garage floor all cleared out on the other side of those cabinets, so we can start building that loft. So all my toolboxes and tools are stuffed back here in this stall out of the way at the moment, so that made things a little more difficult. But one more thing we need to check here is the brake fluid. She's down a little bit, so we'll have to top that off. But I'll do that off camera. That's the impromptu brake job on the F350. Hope you enjoyed watching. Please subscribe. We'd appreciate a thumbs up. Any questions or comments are always welcome. Have a good day.